Daniel had cooked for celebrities, politicians, and even a few minor royals during his 3 years as a private chef. But nothing had prepared him for the day he walked into Victoria Reed's penthouse apartment. The place was all glass and steel, with a view of the city that probably cost more than most people made in a lifetime. Everything was pristine, cold, and completely impersonal. No family photos, no plants, nothing that suggested an actual human being lived there. He found her in the home office, hunched over 3 computer screens like some kind of corporate wizard. She didn't look up when he entered, just kept typing, her fingers flying across the keyboard with the kind of intensity that made Daniel feel like he was interrupting something incredibly important. "Ms. Reed, I'm Daniel, your new chef. We had an appointment to discuss your meal preferences." She held up one finger, not in a rude way exactly, more like she was so deep in whatever she was doing that pulling her attention away would cause her actual physical pain. Daniel stood there, his portfolio of recipes in hand, feeling more and more awkward by the second. 5 minutes passed, then 10. He started counting the empty coffee cups scattered around her desk. 7. There were 7 coffee cups, all at various stages of being forgotten. One still had a tea bag hanging over the side, never removed. Another had what looked like it might have been a cappuccino at some point in the distant past. Finally, she looked up. Her eyes were red-rimmed, and there were dark circles underneath that no amount of expensive concealer could quite hide. She was younger than he'd expected, maybe mid-30s, with sharp features and hair pulled back so tightly it looked painful. "Right. The chef. What do you need?" Daniel tried not to feel insulted. This was a job, after all. A well-paying one that would help him get back on his feet after his restaurant had gone under last year. He opened his portfolio and started walking her through his signature dishes. Pan-seared duck breast with cherry reduction, handmade pasta with truffle cream sauce, miso-glazed salmon with— "Stop!" She cut him off mid-sentence. "I don't need any of that fancy stuff. I need food that's efficient, quick to eat, high protein, nothing that requires me to sit down for more than 10 minutes. Daniel blinked. "You want me to— "Not cook? I want you to prepare meals that fuel my body without wasting my time. Think of it as optimization. I have 17 meetings this week, a product launch, 2 board presentations. I don't have time to sit around savoring food." She said the word savoring like it was something vaguely disgusting, like it was a weakness she couldn't afford. Daniel should have argued. Should have told her that food was meant to be enjoyed, not just consumed like gasoline. But he needed this job. Needed it badly, so he swallowed his pride and nodded. "Understood. Simple, efficient, functional. Perfect. Start tomorrow. 7 a.m. sharp. Leave the meals in the kitchen. I'll eat them when I have time." And that was it. She turned back to her screens, and Daniel was dismissed. As he rode the elevator down, he felt a strange heaviness in his chest. He'd met workaholics before, plenty of them, but there was something different about Victoria Reed. Something almost desperate in the way she threw herself into her work. The next morning, Daniel arrived at 6:30 to prep. He made exactly what she'd asked for. Grilled chicken breast plain, steamed vegetables with no seasoning, brown rice, a protein shake. He plated it all neatly, left it in the refrigerator with reheating instructions, and left. The following day, he came back to find most of the food untouched. The chicken had 1 bite taken out of it. The vegetables hadn't been touched at all. The protein shake was still sitting there, separated into layers. This pattern continued for a week. He'd make simple, boring food. She'd barely eat any of it. He'd throw most of it away and start over. On day 8, Daniel found her passed out at her desk. It was 2 in the afternoon, and she was slumped over her keyboard, fast asleep. Or maybe she'd just stopped. It was hard to tell. For a second, he actually got worried and checked to make sure she was breathing. She woke up with a start when he accidentally knocked over one of the 17 coffee cups on her desk. "What time is it?" She looked around, disoriented. 2:15? In the afternoon? She grabbed her phone, scrolling frantically. No. I missed the call with Tokyo. How did I? She stopped, looking at him like she'd just remembered he existed. "What are you doing here? You're supposed to leave the food and go." "I was worried. You haven't eaten anything I've made in 3 days. I've been busy." "Busy starving yourself?" The words came out harsher than he intended. Victoria's eyes narrowed, and for a moment he thought she was going to fire him on the spot. Instead, she just looked tired. "My eating habits aren't your concern. Just leave the food. I'll get to it." But she wouldn't. Daniel knew she wouldn't. He'd watched his own father work himself into an early grave, convinced that success meant sacrificing everything else. The endless hours, the skipped meals, the way nothing was ever enough. He'd sworn he'd never become that person. Yet here was someone sprinting down that same path, and something in him couldn't just stand by and watch. Over the next few days, Daniel started experimenting. Nothing dramatic, just small changes. He added a squeeze of lemon to the chicken, fresh herbs to the vegetables. He made the brown rice actually taste like something by cooking it in homemade stock instead of water. Victoria noticed. Of course she noticed. But she didn't say anything. Just kept eating slightly more of the food he prepared. Not a lot more, but enough that he wasn't throwing away quite as much. Then one evening he made a mistake. Or maybe it wasn't a mistake. Maybe it was intentional and he was just lying to himself about it. He prepared her dinner with actual care. Seared the fish until it had a perfect golden crust. Made a light sauce with butter, garlic, and white wine. Roasted the vegetables until they were caramelized and sweet. Arranged everything on the plate like it mattered. He was just finishing the plating when Victoria walked into the kitchen. She'd clearly been heading for another cup of coffee, but stopped when she saw what he was doing. What is this? Dinner. This isn't what I asked for. You asked for food that wouldn't waste your time. This won't. It'll take you 15 minutes to eat. But for those 15 minutes, you'll actually be nourished instead of just refueled. She stared at the plate, then at him. Her expression was unreadable. I pay you to follow instructions, not to make decisions about what I need. You pay me to cook for you. And right now, I'm watching you waste away on boring food you don't even eat. When's the last time you actually tasted something? Actually enjoyed a meal? Enjoyment is inefficient. Enjoyment is human. The silence that followed was heavy. Victoria looked at the plate again and something flickered across her face. Something that might have been longing, or maybe just exhaustion. I don't have time for this, she said quietly. But she didn't sound angry anymore, just lost. Everyone has 15 minutes, Daniel said. Even you. She picked up the fork, took a bite, and for just a second her face changed. The hard edges softened. Her shoulders dropped half an inch. She looked almost surprised, like she'd forgotten food could taste like anything other than obligation. Then the moment passed. She set down the fork and looked at him with those tired, guarded eyes. It's good, but it's still a waste of time. Tomorrow, go back to the simple meals. She walked out, leaving the plate half finished. Daniel stood in that sterile kitchen, surrounded by high-end appliances that probably never got used, and made a decision. He wasn't going to let this woman work herself to death. Not if he could help it. He just had to figure out how to save someone who didn't think she needed saving. Daniel didn't go back to the simple meals. He couldn't. Something about Victoria's hollow eyes and untouched plates had gotten under his skin. So he started small. Tiny rebellions that she might not even notice. He made her oatmeal for breakfast but added cinnamon and honey. Cooked her chicken with a herb rub that made the whole apartment smell amazing. Swapped her plain yogurt for Greek yogurt with fresh berries hidden at the bottom. Nothing too obvious. Nothing she could call him out on. Just enough to remind her taste buds that food could be more than fuel. For 3 days she said nothing. Just ate slightly more than before and left the dishes in the sink. Daniel took that as a win. On day 4 he found a note on the counter. The oatmeal is too sweet. The chicken doesn't need seasoning. Plain is fine. He crumpled up the note and made her favorite dinner even better than before. Roasted salmon with a miso glaze. Vegetables that actually had flavor. Rice cooked with garlic and a touch of butter. He even made fresh bread because why not? If she was going to fire him, he might as well go out swinging. Victoria came home earlier than usual that evening. Daniel was still in the kitchen, pulling the bread from the oven. The smell filled the entire apartment, warm and comforting. The kind of smell that made a place feel like a home instead of a hotel room. She stood in the doorway, her laptop bag still on her shoulder, staring at him. I specifically told you to keep it simple. I know. So why is there fresh bread? Because bread is simple. Flour, water, yeast, salt. Doesn't get much simpler than that. You know what I meant. Daniel set down the bread and turned to face her. He'd been practicing this conversation in his head for days, but now that the moment was here, all his prepared speeches evaporated. When's the last time you ate something that made you happy? He asked. Victoria blinked, thrown off by the question. What does happiness have to do with eating? Everything. Food isn't just about calories and nutrients. It's about being alive. Actually alive, not just existing. I don't have time for philosophy lessons. Then make time. The words hung in the air between them. Victoria's jaw tightened. Her eyes went cold in that way powerful people's eyes do when someone has crossed a line. You're fired. Daniel's stomach dropped, but he kept his face neutral. He'd known this was coming. Had known it since the first time he'd ignored her instructions. Fine, he said, starting to pack up his knives. But before I go, can I ask you something? She crossed her arms. What? Why did you hire a chef if you don't want to eat? I hired you to prepare meals so I wouldn't have to think about food. So I could focus on work. No, you hired me because someone told you that you needed to take better care of yourself. A doctor, maybe? Or a friend? Someone who cared enough to worry. Victoria's face went pale. Bullseye. My health is fine. Is it? Because from where I'm standing, you look exhausted. You work 18-hour days. You forget to eat. You're probably running on coffee and willpower, and sooner or later that stops being enough. You don't know anything about me. I know that you're scared, Daniel said quietly. I know that stopping feels dangerous. Like if you slow down for even a second, everything will fall apart. I know because I used to be exactly like you. That got her attention. She uncrossed her arms just slightly. What do you mean? Daniel hadn't planned to tell her this. Hadn't planned to tell anyone. But something about this woman's stubborn self-destruction made him want to be honest. I had a restaurant. Spent 5 years building it from nothing. Worked every single day. Missed birthdays, holidays, everything. Told myself it would all be worth it once I made it big. He paused, wrapping his knives carefully. The restaurant went under anyway. Turned out that working myself half to death didn't guarantee success. Just guaranteed that I'd be alone and exhausted when everything fell apart. Victoria was quiet for a long moment. When she spoke, her voice was softer than he'd ever heard it. I'm not going to fail. Maybe not. But what's the point of success if you're too burned out to enjoy it? She didn't answer. Just stood there looking at the food he'd prepared. The bread cooling on the counter. The salmon that smelled like something worth coming home to. Daniel finished packing his bag, ready to walk out. Wait, he turned back. Victoria was staring at her shoes, her whole body tense. I can't. I don't know how to do what you're asking. What am I asking? To slow down. To care about things like food and rest and... She gestured helplessly. All of it. I built this company from scratch. Do you know how hard that was? How many people told me I'd fail? How many times I almost did fail? I can imagine. No, you can't. Her voice cracked slightly. My father told me I'd never amount to anything. Said business was for people who were smart, not people who were lucky. I've spent 10 years proving him wrong. 10 years showing that I'm not just lucky, I'm capable. And if I stop, if I slow down, even for a second, he wins. Daniel finished softly. Victoria nodded, blinking rapidly. She looked away, composing herself. Daniel set his bag down. He wasn't sure what he was doing, but walking away felt wrong now. What if I made you a deal? She looked at him suspiciously. What kind of deal? Give me 2 weeks. Let me cook whatever I want. Actually sit down and eat it. Really eat it. Not just shovel it down between emails. If after 2 weeks you still think it's a waste of time, I'll go back to plain chicken and brown rice. Or I'll leave. Your choice. Why do you care so much? Good question. Daniel wasn't entirely sure himself. Maybe because saving her felt like saving the person he used to be. Maybe because something about her reminded him why he'd fallen in love with cooking in the first place. To nourish people. To give them moments of joy in a hard world. Because I'm a chef, he said finally. And watching someone starve themselves physically or otherwise goes against everything I believe in. Victoria studied him for a long time. He could see her calculating, weighing pros and cons, trying to figure out his angle. Finally, she sighed, 2 weeks. But I'm not making any promises. And if you make me sit through some long, elaborate meal, I'm ending this immediately. Deal. She picked up a piece of the bread he'd made, tearing off a corner. She ate it slowly, and he watched her face transform. The hard lines softened. Her eyes closed for just a second. When she opened them again, she looked almost vulnerable. This is really good, she admitted quietly. I know. Don't get cocky. Wouldn't dream of it. For the first time since he'd met her, Victoria almost smiled. It was tiny, barely there, gone in a second, but it was real. She took the plate of salmon to her office, and Daniel heard her actually sit down at the table instead of eating at her desk. It was a small victory. Tiny, really, but it felt like progress. Over the next few days, Daniel threw everything he had into those meals. He cooked the food his grandmother used to make, recipes that smelled like home and memory. He prepared dishes from his travels, each one telling a story of a place he'd been, a person he'd met. He made comfort food and adventure food and celebration food, and slowly something began to change. Victoria started appearing in the kitchen while he cooked. At first, she'd just grab coffee and leave. Then she started asking questions. Why did he use that spice? What was he making? Where did that recipe come from? One rainy evening, he made soup. Simple chicken soup, but the kind that takes hours to make properly. Homemade stock. Vegetables cut just right. Noodles made from scratch. The apartment filled with the smell of it, warm and comforting. Victoria appeared in the doorway, wrapped in a cardigan that looked about 10 years old. The first casual thing he'd ever seen her wear. That smells incredible. It's ready if you want some. She sat at the kitchen counter instead of taking the bowl to her office. Daniel ladled out the soup, added fresh herbs on top, and set it in front of her. This was my comfort food, he said, starting to clean up. After the restaurant closed, I couldn't cook for weeks. Couldn't even look at my knives. But eventually I made this soup, and it reminded me why I started cooking in the first place. Victoria took a spoonful, then another. Then she just kept eating, not looking at her phone, not checking her laptop, just eating soup and being present. When she finished, she looked at him with those tired eyes that seemed slightly less tired than before. "Thank you," she said. "Not just for the soup, for this, all of it. You're welcome. I don't know if I can keep doing this after 2 weeks. The eating slowly thing. The taking time, I don't know if I know how." "Then I'll teach you," Daniel said, and meant it. Something had shifted between them, something neither of them was quite ready to name. But it was there, hanging in the air like the smell of fresh bread, like the beginning of something that could either save them both or break their hearts completely. The 2 weeks started changing both of them in ways neither expected. Daniel found himself thinking about Victoria's meals more carefully than he'd thought about anything in years. Each dish became a small message, a quiet way of saying things he didn't know how to put into words. That she mattered, that she deserved care, that life could be more than just work and exhaustion. Victoria started leaving work at 6 instead of 9. Then at 5:30, she'd come home and find Daniel in the kitchen, and instead of disappearing into her office, she'd linger, ask questions. Sometimes she'd even sit at the counter and watch him cook, her laptop closed for once. On day 9 of their agreement, he made pasta from scratch. The real deal, flour and eggs mixed by hand, rolled out thin, cut into perfect strips. It was time-consuming and completely unnecessary when dried pasta existed. But that wasn't the point. Victoria came home to find the kitchen counter covered in flour and Daniel up to his elbows in dough. "What happened in here? Did a bakery explode?" He laughed. "I'm making pasta. Want to help? I don't cook. Everyone can cook. It's not magic. It's just following steps." She looked skeptical but set down her bag. "What do I do?" He showed her how to knead the dough, how to feel when it was ready, how to roll it out thin. Her first attempts were disasters, too thick, uneven. She got frustrated quickly, that same intensity she brought to everything else making her angry at her own imperfection. "This is impossible." "It's not. You're just expecting to be perfect on the first try. Let yourself be bad at something." She stopped, her hand still in the dough, and looked at him. "I don't remember the last time I was bad at something." "That's sad. That's success, is it though?" Daniel moved closer, guiding her hands. "Success is never making mistakes? Never learning anything new? That sounds lonely." Victoria was quiet, focusing on the dough. When she finally rolled it out properly, thin and even, her whole face lit up with surprise. "I did it." "You did." They cooked the pasta together, and Daniel taught her how to make a simple sauce. Butter, garlic, pasta water, parmesan. 5 ingredients that somehow became something magical. They sat at her dining table, a surface she'd probably never actually eaten on before, and had dinner together. "Tell me about your restaurant," she said suddenly. "The one that closed. What was it like?" Daniel hadn't talked about this with anyone, not really, but something about the way she asked, genuinely curious, made him want to tell her. It was everything I'd ever wanted. Small place, only 20 tables. I knew every customer's name. Cooked food that made people happy. He paused, twirling pasta on his fork. But I was terrified every single day, terrified it would fail, that I'd lose it all. So I worked constantly, drove away everyone who cared about me, stopped enjoying the thing I loved because I was so scared of losing it. What happened? Exactly what I was afraid of. A bad review, some slow months, landlord raised the rent. I couldn't keep up. The thing I'd worked so hard to protect I'd already destroyed by never actually living in it. I was so busy being afraid that I forgot to be present. Victoria set down her fork, her eyes understanding. My father died 6 months ago. Daniel hadn't expected that. I'm sorry. Don't be. We hadn't spoken in 5 years. He told me starting my company was stupid, that I'd fail within a year, that I was embarrassing him. She looked at her hands. I built this whole empire to prove him wrong, worked every single day to show him I was good enough. And then he died before I could, before he could see what I'd accomplished. That must hurt. What hurts is that I'm still doing it, still working like he's watching. Like if I stop, I'll prove him right somehow, even though he's gone. Her voice cracked. I don't know how to stop. I don't know who I am without the work. Daniel reached across the table and took her hand. She looked startled, like physical. Comfort was a foreign language she'd forgotten how to speak. You're whoever you want to be. That's the terrifying, beautiful thing about it. She squeezed his hand and they sat there in comfortable silence, finishing their pasta. It was the most honest conversation Daniel had had in years. And based on the look on Victoria's face, it was the most honest she'd had in even longer. After that night, something shifted between them. The walls came down inch by inch. She started telling him about her day, not just the accomplishments but the frustrations, the fears, the moments when she wasn't sure she could keep going. He told her about his dreams of opening another restaurant someday, about the recipes he'd been too scared to try, about the parts of himself he'd lost when his business failed. They started having dinner together every night, not as employer and employee but as two people who'd somehow become friends. Or maybe something more than friends, though neither was ready to say that out loud. Victoria began teaching herself to cook on weekends, calling Daniel with panicked questions about why her sauce was lumpy or her chicken was dry. He'd talk her through it, and she'd send him pictures of her attempts, proud even when they were disasters. One Saturday, she called him at noon. I'm making that soup you made, the comfort food one. The chicken soup? Yeah. Can you come over? I think I'm doing something wrong. He shouldn't have said yes. It was his day off, and showing up at her apartment when she didn't need him to cook was crossing a line. But he went anyway, unable to resist. He found her kitchen in chaos. Every pot she owned was out. There were vegetable peelings everywhere. She had flour in her hair somehow, even though the recipe didn't call for flour. How did you? Never mind. He started helping her salvage the soup. They worked side by side, and Daniel realized how comfortable this felt. How right. Like they'd been cooking together for years instead of weeks. Victoria was actually humming as she chopped carrots. He'd never heard her hum before. You seem happy, he said. She looked surprised, like she hadn't noticed. I guess I am. Is that weird? That you're happy? No. That's literally the least weird thing in the world. It feels weird. I'm not productive, I'm not accomplishing anything, I'm just making soup on a Saturday. That is accomplishing something. You're accomplishing being human. She smiled. And it wasn't that tiny, guarded smile anymore. It was real. Full. It changed her whole face, made her look younger and lighter and like someone who knew how to be happy. The soup turned out good. Not perfect, but good. They ate it sitting on her couch, something else she'd probably never done before. Victoria curled up in the corner, bowl in her lap, looking more relaxed than he'd ever seen her. I've been thinking, she said carefully. The 2 weeks are up tomorrow. Daniel's heart sank. He'd forgotten to count the days, too caught up in This new version of his life where cooking for Victoria had become the best part of his day. Right. So, back to plain chicken? No, I was thinking. Maybe we don't go back, maybe we keep doing this. The real food, the taking time, She gestured between them. Whatever this is. This? Us. Having dinner together. Talking. I don't want to go back to the way things were. I like this better. I like who I am when you're around. Daniel set down his bowl. Victoria, I need to tell you something. She looked nervous suddenly. What? This stopped being just a job for me a while ago. These dinners, these conversations teaching you to cook. I look forward to them all day. You're the reason I wake up excited to go to work. And that's... He took a breath. That's probably inappropriate to say to someone who pays me, but it's true. Victoria was quiet for a long moment. Then she set down her own bowl and moved closer to him on the couch. What if I told you it's not inappropriate? What if I told you I feel the same way? Do you? I think about you constantly. When I'm in meetings, I'm wondering what you're making for dinner. When I'm reviewing contracts, I'm remembering something funny you said. You've made my life better in every possible way, and it has nothing to do with the food. They were close now, closer than they'd ever been. Daniel could count the flecks of gold in her dark eyes, could see the slight tremble in her hands. This is complicated, he said softly. Everything worthwhile is complicated. I'm your employee, so I'll fire you, and then I'll hire you back as my personal chef, or my friend, or... She kissed him, soft and tentative and sweet. When she pulled back, she was smiling that real smile again, or whatever we want this to be. Daniel kissed her back, and it felt like coming home, like finding something he'd been missing without knowing he'd lost it. They stayed on that couch for hours, talking and laughing and kissing, the dirty soup bowls forgotten on the coffee table. For the first time in longer than either could remember, they weren't thinking about work or failure or proving anyone wrong. They were just there, in that moment, happy and present and alive. Everything changed after that kiss on the couch, but also nothing changed at all. Daniel still showed up every morning to cook. Victoria still went to work. But now there were text messages throughout the day, stolen kisses in the kitchen, the way she'd come up behind him while he was chopping vegetables and wrap her arms around his waist. They kept it quiet, not because they were ashamed, but because what they had felt precious, fragile, like if they told anyone, it might break under the weight of other people's opinions. 3 weeks into their relationship, Victoria came home with news. Her company was hosting a charity gala, a huge event with investors and press and everyone who mattered in the tech world. Her usual catering company had just canceled, something about a kitchen fire and insurance issues. I know it's asking a lot, she said, pacing her kitchen while Daniel made dinner, but would you consider catering it? I'll pay you triple your rate. More if you need it, I just can't trust anyone else to pull this off. Daniel's stomach did a complicated flip. An event like that could change everything for him. The guest list alone was worth more than any advertising he could afford. If he impressed those people, he could have investors lining up, could finally open that restaurant he'd been dreaming about. But it also meant stepping into Victoria's world in a very public way, meant risking what they had by mixing business with their relationship. When is it? 2 weeks. That's not much time. I know, and I understand if you can't. I just thought, I'll do it. Her face lit up. Really? Really. But I'm going to need full creative control, and you have to trust me. I do trust you. Completely. Over the next 2 weeks, Daniel barely slept. He planned a menu that would blow everyone away, tested dishes until they were perfect, called in favors from every contact he still had in the restaurant world. Victoria helped when she could, taste testing and offering opinions, but mostly she just believed in him, and that belief meant everything. The night of the gala, Daniel arrived at the venue 6 hours early with his team. Everything had to be perfect. This wasn't just about impressing Victoria's guests. This was about proving to himself that he could do this. that his failure hadn't been the end of his story. By the time guests started arriving, the kitchen was running like a well-oiled machine. Daniel was everywhere at once, checking plates, adjusting seasonings, making sure every single dish that went out was exactly right. He caught glimpses of Victoria throughout the night. She looked stunning in a midnight blue dress, working the room with the confidence of someone who owned it. Every time their eyes met across the crowded ballroom, she'd smile. A small, private smile just for him. The food was a hit. He could tell by the way people kept going back for more. By the compliments he overheard when he did walkthroughs of the dining area. By the way, Victoria's business partner cornered her to ask who the caterer was. But the real moment came when a man in an expensive suit found his way into the kitchen. Daniel was plating desserts, focused and covered in chocolate sauce, when the man cleared his throat. "Are you the chef?" "I am. Is everything okay with the food?" "More than okay. That salmon course was extraordinary. The best thing I've eaten in years." He held out a business card. "Richard Martinez. I own several restaurants in the city, and I've been looking for a chef to head up a new project. Something innovative, ambitious. Based on what I've tasted tonight, you might be exactly what I'm looking for." Daniel's hands froze. He looked at the card, then at the man's face, trying to figure out if this was real. "I don't understand. I want to invest in you. Back a restaurant, full funding. You'd have complete creative control. Your vision, your menu, your place," Richard smiled. "This is the opportunity of a lifetime. Think about it. Call me." He walked away, leaving Daniel standing there in shock. This was it. Everything he'd worked for. Everything he'd lost and thought he'd never get back. A real chance to rebuild, bigger and better than before, but it meant leaving. Meant giving up his position with Victoria. Meant changing everything about the life they'd just started building together. He found her later after the dessert course in a quiet corner of the venue. She was checking her phone, taking a rare moment to breathe. "Hey," he said softly. She looked up, her face glowing. "You were incredible tonight. Everyone's talking about the food. I've had at least 10 people ask for your contact information. Victoria, I need to tell you something." Her smile faded slightly. "What's wrong?" He told her about Richard Martinez, about the offer, about the restaurant. With every word, he watched her face try to stay neutral, try to be happy for him even as something sad crept into her eyes. "That's amazing," she said when he finished. "That's everything you wanted." "Yeah, so why do you look like someone died?" "Because taking it means leaving. Means I can't be your chef anymore. Means everything changes." Victoria was quiet for a long moment. Around them, the gala continued. People laughing and networking and drinking expensive wine. But in their small corner, the world felt very still. "You have to take it," she said finally. "Do I?" "Daniel, this is your dream. I'm not going to let you give that up for me. What if I want to?" "Then you're being stupid." She grabbed his hands, her grip tight. "I have spent my entire life putting work before everything else. Before relationships, before happiness, before living. I won't let you do the same thing. I won't be the reason you don't chase your dream. But No, listen to me." Her voice cracked slightly. "I care about you so much. But if you stay for me, if you give this up, you'll resent me eventually. Maybe not today or tomorrow, but someday. And I couldn't bear that." Daniel felt something breaking in his chest. "So that's it? We're done?" "I don't know. I don't know what we are or what we could be. But I know you need to do this. For yourself." She kissed him. Soft and sad and full of everything they weren't saying. Then she walked away, back into the crowd, leaving him standing there with a business card in his pocket and a hole in his heart. The rest of the gala passed in a blur. Daniel went through the motions, cleaning up, packing equipment, accepting compliments he barely heard. His team congratulated him on the success, completely unaware that he felt like he was falling apart. He went home alone that night and sat in his apartment, staring at Richard Martinez's business card. This should have been the happiest moment of his life. This should have felt like winning. Instead, it felt like he'd just lost something irreplaceable. His phone buzzed. A text from Victoria. "Just 3 words, I'm proud of you." He called her. She answered on the first ring. "Hey," she said softly. "I don't want to lose you. I don't want to lose you either." "So what do we do?" Victoria sighed. "I don't know. I've never been good at relationships. I don't know how to make this work when everything's changing. Maybe we figure it out together. Maybe." She paused. Call him. Take the meeting. See what he's really offering. And then we'll talk. Really talk. About what we want. What we're willing to risk, okay? Daniel, yeah? For what it's worth, tonight wasn't just about the food. Watching you work, seeing you in your element, so confident and skilled and alive. I've never been more attracted to anyone in my life. He smiled, despite everything. That's worth a lot, actually. They talked for another hour about nothing and everything. When he finally hung up, Daniel felt steadier. Still scared, still uncertain, but not alone. He looked at the business card again. Richard Martinez wanted to meet next week. Wanted to discuss terms, locations, concepts. It was real. It was happening, but so was Victoria. So was whatever they'd found together in her sterile apartment, over pasta and soup and honest conversations, and somehow he had to figure out how to have both. The next morning, Daniel called Richard and set up the meeting. Then he went to Victoria's apartment, using the key she'd given him weeks ago. She was in the kitchen attempting to make breakfast. There were eggshells in the pan and she looked adorably frustrated. "I'm trying to make an omelet," she said. "It's not going well. I can see that." She turned off the stove and faced him. "Did you call him?" "I did. We're meeting next week." "Good. But I need you to know something. Whatever happens with the restaurant, I'm not giving up on us. I don't know how it's going to work, but I'm not walking away from you." Victoria crossed the kitchen and kissed him. "Then we'll figure it out together. Even if it's messy and complicated and scary. Especially if it's messy and complicated and scary." They stood there in her disaster of a kitchen, holding each other, knowing that everything was about to change but refusing to let fear win. Whatever came next, they'd face it together. The meeting with Richard Martinez was everything Daniel had hoped for, and everything that terrified him. A full restaurant, prime location downtown, complete creative control and funding that would let him build something truly special. It was the second chance he'd thought he'd never get. He sat across from Richard in a coffee shop, the contract between them, and all he could think about was Victoria. About leaving her apartment in the mornings. About not cooking dinner for her every night. About losing the small, precious routine they'd built together. "You seem hesitant," Richard said, reading him easily. "Most chefs would have signed by now. It's an incredible offer, but..." Daniel stirred his coffee, searching for words. "I'm involved with someone, and taking this means our whole relationship has to change. I don't know if it can survive that." Richard leaned back in his chair, studying him. "Can I give you some advice? I've opened 12 restaurants. Every single one required sacrifice. Time, relationships, comfort. But here's what I've learned. The right people adapt. They find ways to make it work. And the wrong people, well, you're better off knowing that sooner rather than later. That's not exactly comforting. It's not meant to be. It's meant to be honest." Richard pushed the contract closer. "Take a few days. Think about it. But don't let fear make the decision for you. I've seen too many talented people stay small because they were afraid of what success might cost them." Daniel took the contract home. He read it 17 times, each word a promise and a threat. That night, Victoria came over to his apartment for the first time. She'd always insisted on her place before, maintaining some boundary between their professional and personal lives, but things were different now. She looked around his small studio, taking in the mismatched furniture and the tiny kitchen, the walls covered in recipes he'd torn from magazines over the years. "This is nice," she said. "It's very you. It's small. Small can be good. Sometimes big just means more space to hide in." She sat on his worn couch. "Did you meet with him?" Daniel handed her the contract. She read it slowly, her business brain processing every clause and condition. When she finished, she looked up at him with eyes that were trying very hard to be happy. "This is perfect. He's giving you everything, I know. So why haven't you signed it?" "Because I'm terrified." "Not of failing. I've already failed once and survived it. I'm terrified of succeeding and losing you in the process." Victoria set down the contract and patted the couch next to her. He sat and she took his hand. "I need to tell you something," she said. "After you started cooking for me, after you pushed me to slow down and actually live my life, I started thinking about what I was doing. Why I was working so hard, what I was trying to prove. And I realized I was miserable. I'd built this company, proven everyone wrong, achieved every goal I set. But I was empty, going through the motions, until you showed up and reminded me that life is supposed to feel like something. She turned to face him fully, her expression more open than he'd ever seen it. I've spent the last few weeks thinking about what I really want, not what my father would want or what would look impressive or what would prove I'm successful. What I actually want? What do you want? Balance. I want to work hard at something I love, but not at the expense of everything else. I want to come home and cook terrible omelets. I want to have someone I can talk to about my day. I want you. Daniel felt his throat tighten. I want you too. Then we make it work. You open your restaurant. I restructure my company so I'm not drowning in 18-hour days. We figure out how to build lives that have room for both success and each other. You'd really do that? Change how you work? I've already started. I promoted my VP to COO. She's brilliant and she's been ready for more responsibility for years. I'm delegating better, actually taking weekends off, she smiled. Turns out the company doesn't fall apart when I'm not there every second. Who knew? Victoria, I'm not doing this just for you. I'm doing it for me. You helped me see that I was drowning, but I had to decide to swim, and I'm deciding. Every day. Daniel pulled her close, holding her tight. They stayed like that for a long time, just breathing together, letting the fear and uncertainty settle into something manageable. I'm going to take the restaurant, he said finally. Good. But I have some conditions for Richard, mostly about scheduling, about having time for a life outside the restaurant, about not making the same mistakes I made before. That's smart. I learned from the best. Over the next month, everything changed and nothing changed. Daniel signed the contract with his conditions intact. He hired a team, started planning the menu, threw himself into building something he could be proud of. But he also left work at reasonable hours, made time for dinners with Victoria, protected the parts of his life that mattered. Victoria kept her word too. She restructured her company, creating systems that didn't require her constant presence. She started a wellness program for her employees, remembering how close she'd come to burning out completely. And she kept learning to cook, getting slightly better each time, though she'd never be as good as Daniel, and she was okay with that. They had their first real fight 3 weeks before the restaurant opened. Daniel was stressed and snapped at her for asking about menu decisions. She withdrew into work mode, cold and distant. They spent 2 days barely speaking, both too stubborn to apologize first. Finally, Victoria showed up at the restaurant site with takeout from his favorite Thai place. I'm sorry, she said. I'm not good at this. At being in a relationship. I don't know how to help when you're stressed without being controlling. I'm sorry too. I pushed you away because I was scared. Old habits. They ate pad thai sitting on paint cans in the half-finished dining room, and it was perfect. Messy and imperfect and real. We're going to fight sometimes, Victoria said. We're both stubborn and independent and kind of broken in our own ways. I know. But I'd rather fight with you than be comfortable with anyone else. Daniel kissed her, tasting Thai basil and possibility. Same. The restaurant opened on a cold Tuesday in November. The reviews were incredible. People lined up for reservations. Food critics praised Daniel's innovative menu and his perfect execution. It was everything he'd dreamed of, and this time he was present enough to enjoy it. Victoria came to the opening, and Daniel saw her talking to Richard Martinez, probably discussing business things he didn't understand. But when she caught his eye across the crowded restaurant, she smiled that real smile that was just for him. 6 months later, they were cooking together in Victoria's kitchen on a random Wednesday night. No special occasion, just another evening in a string of evenings they'd built together. Daniel was teaching her how to make risotto properly, a lesson that required patience and constant stirring. This is taking forever, Victoria complained. Good things take time. That's a greeting card sentiment. Doesn't make it less true. She kept stirring, and he watched her face. The way she concentrated, the little furrow between her eyebrows, the way her tongue stuck out slightly when she was focused. He loved all of it. Loved her. I'm thinking of selling the company, she said suddenly. Daniel nearly dropped the wooden spoon he was holding. What? Not getting rid of it. Selling majority shares. Staying on the board but stepping back from day-to-day operations. I've been thinking about it for a while, and I realized I don't want to run a company anymore. I want to teach. Mentor young entrepreneurs. Help other people build things without burning themselves out the way I did. That's huge. I know. It's terrifying. My whole identity has been wrapped up in that company for 10 years. But I'm ready. I think. She looked at him nervously. What do you think? I think you're the bravest person I've ever met. I think you should do whatever makes you happy. And I think this risotto is about to burn if you don't stir it. She laughed and went back to stirring. They finished cooking together, moving around each other in the easy rhythm of two people who'd learned to share space. The risotto turned out perfect, creamy and rich and exactly right. They ate on the couch, bowls in their laps, Victoria's feet tucked under Daniel's leg. The TV was on, but neither was really watching. They were just there together, comfortable in the silence. Thank you, Victoria said softly. For what? For pushing me. For not letting me waste away. For showing me that life could be more than work and exhaustion. Thank you for letting me. For trusting me. For being brave enough to change. She set down her bowl and kissed him, and it tasted like butter and Parmesan and home. A year later, Daniel's restaurant had a waiting list 3 months long. Victoria had sold her company and was teaching entrepreneurship at the local university, loving every minute of it. They'd moved in together, found an apartment with a kitchen big enough for both of them to cook in without bumping into each other constantly. They still fought sometimes, still had moments of fear and doubt. Victoria still occasionally tried to solve emotional problems with spreadsheets, and Daniel still sometimes worked too many hours and forgot to eat. But they caught each other, reminded each other, chose each other, over and over again. On a quiet Sunday morning, Daniel made pancakes while Victoria attempted to make coffee without breaking the machine. They sat at their small kitchen table eating breakfast and reading the paper, her foot touching his under the table. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't a fairy tale ending with a grand gesture. It was just life. Real, messy, beautiful life. The kind of life they'd both forgotten was possible. What are you thinking about? Victoria asked, catching him staring at her. Just that I'm happy, really happy. Me too, and it was that simple. He'd cooked for the CEO and served her a lesson in love. But she'd taught him one too. That success meant nothing if you were too burned out to enjoy it. That vulnerability was strength. That the best things in life, like the best meals, required time and care and the courage to savor each moment. They finished their pancakes and washed the dishes together, and it was perfect. Not because it was extraordinary, but because it was ordinary. Because they'd both learned that ordinary moments lived with intention and presence and love were actually the most extraordinary thing of all.